Hello everybody, this is the first episode in the international podcast where we talk about everything at Whitgift in relation to Sagebrook International, our first partnership school in India. And with me today is Miss Kerry Mason, who's the Director of Junior Years here at Whitgift, and we're going to be talking about everything to do with young learners in education and teaching and learning. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight on to the introductions. And Miss Kerry Mason, it's nice to meet you. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, absolutely. And thank you for having me on the first ever episode as well. What a privilege. So yes, my name is Kerry Mason. I've worked at Whitgift for 6 years now. I've worked in various roles whilst being at Whitgift. So pastorally, I've worked in year group teams. I've been head of junior English. And now I am super happy in my role as Director of Junior Years, which means I oversee Year 6, Year 7 and Year 8. Before coming to Whitgift, my background has always been kind of Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. So prior to Whitgift, I worked in a preparatory school in southwest London, and we went from early years reception all the way through to Year 8. And there I was head of English, I was head of middle school. So I've had a real range of experience in kind of seeing all the way through from reception, and now that I work at Whitgift, all the way through to Year 13. So it's quite exciting and seeing that whole joined up journey that students take. And yeah, one of my reasons really for coming to Whitgift really was because it bridged that sort of gap between, it didn't start at Year 9, it had a Year 6, which I was super excited about. It makes a real effort to engage with local primary schools as well. So I felt like I was kind of bringing with me the bits that I enjoyed the most about working in a prep school, but applying it to a kind of much bigger and exciting school setting.
Amazing. So I guess you have heard a lot of voices in terms of students.
Yes.
And what does a real student voice look like in the classroom?
Yes, like you say, there's a lot of noise when you work with children. That's just something that you come to sort of know and love. But I think actually real student voice is actually sometimes quite difficult to capture. I think it's easy to think that you're hearing a lot from students when actually it's easy not to give them kind of opportunities to really kind of share what they really think and feel. So I think really good student voice is really built upon, I think, a feeling of safety. So students feeling a sense of understanding their routines and expectations and systems, I think is really important to kind of build that foundation of trust and respect that allows students to be really open. And then I think having kind of formalised opportunities within your school setting and sort of curriculum. So the classics would be kind of your prefect group or your form captains or your house captains having sort of half-termly meetings with them with an agenda is something really, really lovely that they have a real sense of responsibility for as well. But I think just always looking for opportunities to get a genuine sense of how students are doing. So IT, when you've got slightly older students, can be really helpful in that in terms of having an anonymised button or a message sending system. When you have much younger children, I think it's about giving them, again, structure in how to express themselves as well. So feedback boxes in classrooms can be really, really helpful. Having a nominated peer in their group that perhaps is slightly more confident and being the voice on behalf of other students. I think, it has to be really kind of thoughtfully done. But when you get it right, it's so, so powerful. And it just, I think it really transforms a classroom from feeling quite sort of the teacher is the kind of arbiter of kind of all things into something that's much more kind of dialogic and feels much more of a partnership, and the class feels really, really invested.
Nice. So it's that I like the idea of the nominated. How did you word it? The nominated.
Yeah, like sort of almost like spokesperson, particularly when you've got younger children. I think that can be really like a helpful kind of mechanism. Not all students will feel confident to kind of take on that role straight away. Obviously, you want them to get there in the end. It's important that all children learn to kind of advocate for themselves. But usually having that kind of sort of figurehead for a class when they're very, very little can be quite helpful. Little cards with little sort of phrased bits just to help them structure their kind of thoughts can be really, really helpful as well.
A nice sort of simple thing that can become very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. I think simple is a really good point, actually, because I think sometimes I know I'm very guilty of thinking of will end up being really elaborate ways of getting students to kind of give me some feedback or opportunities to talk to them. And often, the simple means that actually it's going to work, that everybody can stick to it, and it becomes, again, part of that embedded routine.
Amazing.
So yeah, simple, very important.
When you cast your mind back to when you were in a prep school, what are the first things you notice in those classrooms?
Oh, you know what? I loved this question. Yeah, it really forced me to kind of go back, and the noise. And I mean that in the best possible way. Those are some of the liveliest classrooms you could ever walk into. It's that buzz of excitement that young children have that I wish we could just bottle and just keep forever and ever. That really, really kind of sticks with me. And just the level of organisation that goes into an EYFS classroom setting or a Key Stage 1 classroom. Like, those practitioners are some of the most skilled in terms of differentiating, organising. Like, you'll often walk in and there'll be 4 or 5 different things going on at different tables, and everybody knows what they're doing. There's a real sense of purpose and drive that, I just think is incredible.
I also think that with early childhood classrooms is that the amount of prep that goes into the activities that need to be changed regularly, and you can have maybe double or triple the amount of activities that need to take place.
Oh, absolutely. Like, we often, and again, it's been really interesting for me coming back to a sort of more of a secondary setting is like how much I didn't appreciate back then. So teaching year 4 English is my subject, so that really isn't just one lesson. You have to really think about it as kind of like 4 or 5 mini lessons within one. So I think the amount of kind of planning and the sort of thought that goes into it is really, really exceptional, really, I think.
How can you ensure that a classroom remains joyful, fun, but that the kids are still getting something deeply pedagogical as well at the same time?
I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? Like school should be fun, and particularly when you've got younger students, like it has to be. I think a huge responsibility that sits with the teacher, actually. Like, the joy has to be within you, and particularly when you're working with younger students, they will follow you, over valley and through dell, as long as it kind of comes from you. So if you've got that energy and that passion, if you're excited for what's going on that day, they absolutely buy into that. So I think the teacher is the kind of holds the key to that kind of energy and enthusiasm, for sure. And once you get that buy-in, they give it back to you. And you can be coming in on a Monday having, really tired, but they give you that energy back so you can kind of keep going. So I think definitely giving teachers freedom to therefore teach things that they are also interested in. So I think thinking, curriculums along skills, as long as we're delivering skills, the actual content itself, I think if we can align that with sort of teachers' passions, what's going on in the real world, what the students are generally into, that also buys in that sense of kind of enjoyment. And we all like, even as adults, don't we apply ourselves best when we feel like something's relevant, where we feel like it is fun and it's a bit different, and that's no different to children either, I think.
For sure.
I love that. I just think that's the real blessing of being a teacher, actually. It's just that you get to, every day I get to come in and I have so many lessons, and they're all really different, and it's all really exciting in terms of what we get to do that day.
Amazing. Yeah. I think this is probably the most interesting question that I'm going to ask you today. Can you share an example of a child's question turning into a learning project?
I was thinking, actually, casting my mind back, I don't know if I can think of like a specific question, but definitely I sort of using a kind of question wall approach is really exciting, I find, at the start of any kind of topic, or again, from an English point of view, if I'm starting a new book, our sort of pre-lesson, if you like, is generating loads of questions, and we have them on post-it notes and you keep them on the wall, and then just this sense of students have ownership over those questions. So we review them, like, right, go back to the board, can anybody answer any of these questions, and the post-it notes come off and new post-it notes go on, and students generally going off to research answers or coming back because they know that there's that post-it that no one's managed to get yet that's still on the wall. So I think just questions generally they're just a part and parcel of any good lesson, aren't they? Good questions from the teacher and students being able to ask questions back. And I think giving them the space to be able to go off and come back with things that they found themselves, I think is just part and parcel of kind of good lessons and good learning.
Agreed, 100%. And it was making me think back to my teaching days of, engaging students with what we call top-down processing, so activating their knowledge, their culture, what they know on a subject to engage them more into something, like the book, a new book, really sort of answering those questions, having some context, which makes the learning more meaningful. And I think that's quite interesting, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just that allowing students, I think, as long as they understand that the learning goes on beyond the classroom, doesn't it? So giving them the freedom to go off and invent things and bring things back. Like sometimes we've been studying something and somebody comes back in with like a Lego model of something, and it's great. And like sharing that with other students is great. Or science, when you're doing densities, the old washing up liquid and olive oil and getting that sort of traffic light beaker and kind of bringing it in the morning is great. And I think valuing that and their time and sharing it with other students as well, I think is really important.
Yeah, very meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
In early years teaching and learning, how do teachers build on strong reading, writing and math skills without necessarily relying on memorization?
Yes. So obviously a huge part of curriculum focus goes towards those kind of cores, English, math, science, but I think it's about seeing them more holistically and cross-curricularly as well. Like they can't just exist in boxes. It can't just be we're looking at full stops today because it's an English lesson and now we come over to maths and we forget anything that existed in English or science. I think they have to be interwoven. So any opportunities you can to mix them up. So what always remember was maths and teaching the bus stop method for division, but then ending up writing a creative writing story about the characters being at the bus stop. So really like mixing them up in that sense and sort of embedding them, I think is really important. Any opportunity you can to sort of mix them up like that. And then you don't see them in isolation, because I think, again, that's when learning unlocks, and that's where you get these real eureka moments, is when a child can connect A to B and see it as actually this interconnected web rather than just these kind of individual moments, I think is really, really important.
Great. So that's my sort of question on teaching. Now, if we go to students, if we think about students, what kind of invisible or not so tangible things happen in schools that really help them later on when they go into secondary school, high school, university and life?
Yeah.
What things in the early years, in your experience, have led to them sort of having something that happens later on in life that's really positive, that's based on what happened when they were 4? Yeah,
gosh, what pressure as well. I know. So I think there are so many. I mean, that's the point of education as well, isn't it? Is that it's beyond just test and assessment and what happens in the classroom. I think fundamentally, a really excellent sort of early years curriculum, primary curriculum, is going to give each child a sense of themselves. Now that may change, but I think every child should have one thing that they are passionate about or that they feel they are talented at, and I think that just helps develop confidence and sense of self, and that might be, I'm really into dinosaurs and that is my thing when I'm 4, and when you get to 13 it might not be dinosaurs anymore, but just having that thing about yourself that you feel passionate and engaged with, I think is so important for sense of self. And then I think confidence as well, being able to speak to adults and speak to peers and put yourself in uncomfortable situations and take risks. Now, younger children are inherently more up for kind of taking risks, and they don't see it in the same way as perhaps you lose that inhibition when you become a teenager and later on. But I think still encouraging students to put themselves outside of their comfort zones and to fail a little bit as well. I think, for some students actually never having an opportunity to fail or for things to go wrong, when it does happen to them later on when they're 15 or 16, it's huge, it's world ending. And I think back to myself as well, it was like physics A level was my big fail moment, and it was like disastrous because I thought I've never actually found myself in a situation of really failing and having to kind of deal with that. So I think making failure as much as success an everyday part of life and learning how to respond to that, I think are really, really important.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the example that we have already touched upon is the nominated spokesperson in the classroom might be that invisible foundation. Okay, it's more visible because they're actually nominated. There might be things growing inside them whilst being this nominated spokesperson that can build confidence.
Absolutely.
Or maybe they might put forward something that doesn't make sense, or the teacher doesn't agree with, or the children don't agree with, but at least they've put themselves out there and they've taken a risk, as you've said, and get some resilience maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we all know from working with children, just like with adults, there are some adults or children that are just naturally more extrovert, and that comes naturally to them, and that is great, and allowing them to kind of explore that. But I think making sure that every child has at least had opportunities and is familiar with kind of having to, stand up in front of others or talk or, advocate for themselves in a particular way, or sort of public speak to a degree. I think those things are really, really important as well. You might not enjoy it, but it's something that, is a skill that we recognise is so important when you get to later on in life.
You said the word important there. And within a school context, what are the most important elements of care and support that a child can have at school? Yeah,
I mean, we know now pedagogically you can't learn well if you don't have, good pastoral support kind of underpinning it. They are effectively two sides of the same coin, aren't they? So I think fundamentally every child has to feel known as an individual, like each and every child. They are different, they are unique, and that's one of the great things about working with children. So I think for parents and for families, it's important for them to feel like, their child is their world, and they're sending them into school and they want to know that their child is known and valued as an individual. So I think that's crucial. And appreciating that child's context as well, so as much as schools are organisations and systems, we're obviously working with humans, and therefore we need to be kind of as individual in our approach as possible. So that kind of knowledge about each individual child is crucial. And then within school, I think having a trusted adult as well is super important. And again, with younger children, it tends to be their class teacher, because it's the adult that they're kind of working with most throughout the day. It may well be a teaching assistant, it may well be the sports coach or the clarinet instructor, but they have to have somebody that they've connected with, that they feel able to come and talk to when things are not going well. And I think having that person in school is crucial. Sometimes it takes a while to find that person, but I think investing time in finding who that person is really, really crucial. And then good links between home and school. Again, a child will never flourish, if school and home are not kind of aligned or are not kind of working together for the best interests of the child. So that kind of open communication, and that can be hard for families sometimes. It's they sometimes can feel a sense of like, you don't want to be judged, or you don't, want to sort of hide things away. But, teachers, schools, we're never here to judge. We're only here to support and work in conjunction with families for the best interest of the child. So I think that's a massive, massive part of it as well, and that being successful.
Right. Habits. So daily habits.
Don't ask about mine.
Okay, well, I won't ask about yours, but what about children and developing strong language and thinking skills? What daily habits can help those two areas?
Yeah. That's an interesting one. And obviously there have been lots of sort of tried and tested methods over the years. So like word of the day was a big thing kind of a few years ago. Personally, I quite like a thunk, which again feels quite dated now, but I still use them. We use them in all our assemblies and form times. So they're a kind of sort of lateral thinking kind of statement that you can discuss in the car on the way to school, or it can be something that you do not before bed, because that does tend to sort of spark off the mind too much before you go to bed, but definitely maybe like a morning thing. So, for example, like, if if you never ever win anything, is that still success? Like, it's those kinds of things. So it encourages kind of verbal articulation, but also kind of, like I say, lateral thinking skills. I think those are really, really good. And I think just modelling as adults as well. I think sometimes it's easy for children to look at adults and think, well, they just know, don't they? They just know automatically. And you get to a point when you get your adult certificate and then suddenly all this knowledge is kind of opened up to you. But I think young children seeing that actually you might be reading something and think, oh, I don't know what that word is, so I'm going to go and look it up. Or like, oh, you know what, I've got no idea what they're talking about on the news, so let's go and find that out together. I think that is really, really important as well. It's all about looking at learning language. It's discovery, isn't it? And it's okay to sort of ask those questions and to not know and to find out, and part of the joy is in finding out. Yeah,
it's what you were saying earlier about, making mistakes is okay, and that if children can see that, then they won't be afraid to put themselves out there, to put forward answers and not be downtrodden when they get it wrong.
No, absolutely. And I think, and particularly with language, I think, by its very nature, it evolves all the time, doesn't it? And there are some great Instagram accounts actually where there's a word of the day, but it's a word that's no longer kind of in use, an archaic word. And they're great fun to discuss. So we always get one of those out at the start of our reading lessons. And they sound great when you actually say them. The meaning of them is also really fun a lot of the time, like a really sort of pragmatic meaning behind them, and then having that discussion of like, oh, why do we think this word's gone out of use? And then you'll always have one child that's like, I'm going to bring it back, and we'll try and get it into every kind of conversation going. But that's also quite a fun way of looking at language.
And we've kind of touched upon it just now, but what can we do to protect children's natural curiosity and keep them this idea of loving learning throughout their lives?
Oh gosh, it's the one thing I wish I could bottle, and I always say this to parents, new joining parents for sort of year 6 and year 7, that those students come in with just brimming with enthusiasm and kind of passion, and it is something that younger children have. It is a superpower to look at the world with this kind of wonder, innate sense of wonder, and discovery. It's just the essence of childhood, isn't it? I think marrying up definitely your extracurricular provision with the curricular. I think those two being in a dialogue with one another is really important, and therefore getting variety. And so there should be events that are different to the normal school day. So we had World Book Day for us, that was like last Thursday. So we had an author in. So that was, period 1 was actually working with an author, which is something different. Culture Day for us, we went off timetable for the day and did loads of different events run by kind of older students. So I think having that kind of variety naturally kind of enhances that sense of kind of joy and wonder. So keeping things different is really, really important. I also think keeping things relatable to the real world, like children love it when they feel like this is something that's practical or applicable, or they can see it around them. And I think particularly with technology that's opened up the world for children now, we have to kind of balance that. There are obviously risks with that. There are also great rewards with that as well. So I think trying to kind of use that where we can to show children that actually what they're learning or what they're doing is kind of a reflection of the world around them, and not a world of 40 years ago, or a world that they don't necessarily or will never kind of see or know. And then I think teachers taking on that role as kind of facilitator. Sometimes teachers, yes, we are there to deliver absolutely and kind of stand at the front, and there is a role for that. But I think in terms of enhancing that sort of passion and curiosity, feeling as though you're a collaborator with students and they are the ones that are taking those steps for discovery, are really, really important as well, and just completely switches the kind of culture of a classroom as well. If students feel ownership over what they're doing, then again that natural kind of curiosity carries on, because it's kind of down to them, isn't it, what they discover and where they go, which is lovely.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much,
Not
Kerry.
at all, that's gone so quickly.
Yeah. And it's been really interesting hearing your thoughts on these quite thought-provoking questions in young learners. So thank you.
No, not at all. And I'm so jealous in a way. It's so exciting when you work with younger children, and it's something that I have such fond memories of, and I do miss. So I think it's super exciting what you've got going on over there.
Thank you.
Thank you.